My name is Marissa Holloway, and I'm 31 years old. People assume competence looks like noise, lists stuck to the fridge, alarms pinging every hour, someone barking instructions into the void. But in my world, competence is a silence you earn. Bills auto-pay on time. Rent clears before the first. Shoes line up neatly by the door. The dishwasher hums at off-peak hours because I learned the rhythm of my utility bills the same way other people memorize song lyrics. For years, my apartment, my lease, my name, my responsibility was my sanctuary. Then I let someone else into it. Connor Hayes was 27 when he moved in. Younger, charming, in that boyish grin way that makes you forgive things you really shouldn't. What started as sleepovers turned into stacked toiletries on my sink, then a drawer in my dresser, then half a closet. 8 months ago, he made it official. "I'll pay half the rent," he said, which quickly became, "Sorry, babe, I'll get you next week." Next week became next month. Next month became quiet resentment I swallowed like medicine. I didn't complain. I told myself love meant flexibility, that being the responsible one wasn't a burden until it was. Last night, everything changed over something so small it should have slid right past me. We were watching a movie, his legs stretched across my lap, when he said it casually, like commenting on the weather. "Oh, by the way, my ex is coming over tomorrow. You'll just have to deal with it." I froze. The remote slipped slightly in my hand before I paused the screen. "Your ex what, Connor?" He didn't even look up. "Sienna, she's in town for work. Just wants to catch up. She'll swing by around lunch." It landed like a slap I hadn't braced for. "Here, you're inviting your ex-girlfriend to my apartment?" He finally looked at me, annoyed, not apologetic. "Marissa, don't make it weird. We're adults. We're friends. It's been years." "You already told her it was okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he shrugged. "You'll just have to deal with it." Deal with it. Like I was a child being told to behave. Like my home, the place I built from scratch, didn't belong to me at all. His tone sharpened. "You're not going to be one of those controlling girlfriends, are you?" "I'm not being controlling. I'm asking why you invited your ex into my space without discussing it with me." He scoffed. "Our space. I live here too." A slow, awful realization settled in. No, he stayed here. He planted himself inside my stability like it was soil soft enough to sink into. And then he compared me to her, said Sienna was so chill about everything. That was the moment something inside me straightened, like a string finally pulled taut. I stood up. "You're right," I said quietly. "No problem." His eyebrows lifted. "Really?" "Yes," I said. "You two enjoy." And I walked into the bedroom. He resumed the movie, blissfully unaware that the next 2 hours would rewrite his entire life. I wasn't angry. I wasn't shaking. I was clear, in a way I hadn't felt in months. This wasn't about Sienna. This was about entitlement, about the subtle, steady erosion of my boundaries, about every late rent payment I covered, every plan he made without asking, every account he logged into and complained about, using my Wi-Fi I paid for. Maybe the ex thing was the spark, but the fire had been building long before it. While he slept, snoring gently, like nothing in the world was amiss, I began packing. His clothes first, folded neatly because spite wasn't the point. His shoes, his jackets, his half-used grooming products, his tangled cords that somehow always ended up on the coffee table. 2 hours of quiet motion, 2 hours of reclaiming my home. I carried everything downstairs to the building entrance, stacking the bags and boxes in a tidy pile right beside the porch. The night air felt cold against my skin, but sharper inside my lungs, like inhaling a new beginning. I wrote a note and placed it on top of his boxes. "You two enjoy the porch. Key won't work. Locks are changed. Don't bother calling. We're done." I called a locksmith. He arrived at 12:04 a.m. $300 for peace. I tipped him extra. By the time the new keys clicked into place, the apartment felt lighter, like I had opened a window that had been shut too long. When I finally crawled into bed, I took the side closest to the door. Mine. Just mine. I slept better than I had in months. Morning arrived with a violent ringtone, then buzzing, then more buzzing. My phone lit up like a warning beacon. 28 texts, 19 missed calls. I scrolled without opening them. Where is my stuff? Why is it outside? The key doesn't work. Answer your phone. You can't do this, Marissa. This is illegal. I'm calling the cops. I brewed coffee. I stirred in creamer. I let the sun spill across the counter while he spiraled. Only then did I text him back. You said your ex was coming over and I'd have to deal with it. I dealt with it. Have a nice life. He called instantly. I put him on speaker while I lifted my mug. "What is wrong with you?" he shouted. "Nothing," I said. "You wanted Sienna over. I didn't. I made a choice." "You can't just throw me out. I live there." "No," I corrected. "You stayed here. Big difference." "This is illegal, Marissa. You have to give notice." "You're not a tenant. You're someone who paid rent sometimes to stay here, and now you're not." He sputtered, searching for leverage. "I'm calling the police." "Great. Explain how you told your current girlfriend you were bringing your ex-girlfriend over to her apartment and she had no choice. Let me know how that conversation goes." I hung up, blocked his number. Then I finished my coffee in silence, a strange calm blooming inside me. For the first time in months, my apartment felt like mine again. And the day wasn't done unraveling, because 30 minutes later, my building superintendent called. "Marissa, your boy showed up with some woman. Tried to get me to let them up." I exhaled slowly. "Sienna?" "Guess so. They're both outside now. I told them their stuff is at the entrance." "And?" He made a scene. The lady looked embarrassed. I didn't let them in. "Thank you," I said softly. "No problem. Figured something was up when the locksmith came last night." As he hung up, a shiver ran through me. Not fear, but recognition. This was just the beginning. By the time I left for work that morning, the hallway smelled like early coffee and freshly vacuumed carpet. Ordinary, peaceful. My phone, however, was a war zone of notifications. Connor had resorted to emailing me now that his number was blocked. "You can't just do this. I have rights. This is illegal. You're insane. Answer me." I didn't. I took the elevator to the lobby, stepped outside into cool air, and felt something unfamiliar, a faint, rising steadiness. Like the part of me that had spent months tiptoeing around his moods had finally exhaled. I got into my car, turned the ignition, and drove off before I could overthink anything. I knew the backlash was coming. I just didn't know how loud it would be. It didn't take long. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang from an unknown number. I assumed it was another attempt from him and ignored it. 2 minutes later, another call came. Then another. I finally answered out of pure exhaustion. "Hello? How could you do this to my son?" "Ah, his mother." I held the phone away from my ear, letting her voice crackle angrily through the speaker. "Mrs. Hayes," I said calmly, "what exactly did Connor tell you?" "That he's sleeping on a couch because you kicked him out with no warning. You threw him into the street like garbage. What kind of woman does that?" "The kind," I said evenly, "whose boyfriend tells her his ex-girlfriend is coming over to her apartment without permission." Silence. Then a scoff sharp enough to cut glass. "That girl is just a friend." "His ex," I corrected. "Someone he dated. Someone he invited into my home without asking. And when I said it wasn't appropriate, he told me I'd have to deal with it." "He didn't mean it like that," she snapped. "You should have talked to him instead of acting psychotic." I almost laughed, not from humor, from disbelief. "Feel free to have your lawyer call me," I said. "I'm done discussing this." "He will call. You'll regret this." She hung up. He would not regret anything, except maybe raising a son who believed boundaries were optional. By lunch, the barrage continued. Another unknown number, another voicemail, another attempt from his mother, ranting about women who think they own men. Then came a text from the building super. "They're back. Connor and some woman, trying to get me to let them upstairs. We're not letting them in. All his stuff is outside. We're watching them on camera." I opened the security app. There they were. Connor pacing aggressively, hands slicing through the air as he argued. Sienna standing slightly behind him, arms crossed tightly, looking uncomfortable, shifting her weight like she regretted showing up. Her expression wasn't smug, it was exhausted. She mouthed something like, "Let's just go." But Connor shook his head, gesturing toward the stairwell as if he could manifest access through sheer willpower. I watched them argue with the super for a full minute before they finally stomped off camera. The feed blurred from their movement, then stabilized again on the empty lobby. It was surreal. My morning coffee still warm on my desk while the man who'd been sharing my bed last night was now pounding on a locked door he no longer had a right to open. I muted the app. The second wave hit the next day. A letter slid under my door, crisp, official looking, with letterhead from some tenant rights advocacy group. It claimed Connor had established residency and that refusing him entry was unlawful eviction. For a second, my stomach dipped. Then logic returned. Connor loved templates. He once used a strongly worded letter generator to email a coworker who stole his lunch. Of course, he'd Google tenant rights letter and send me the first result. I called my friend Evan, a real estate lawyer who specialized in landlord-tenant disputes. When he answered, I read the letter out loud. I could hear him snort laughing before I even finished. Marissa, that's nonsense, Evan said. He wasn't on your lease. He never paid utilities. He was late on rent half the time. Legally, he was a guest, not a tenant. Can he take me to court? I asked. He can try. The judge will laugh harder than I just did. Send a response with your lease and any proof he wasn't a legal tenant. End of story. I hung up and did exactly that. Certified mail. Documented. Final. But the drama didn't stop. That evening, Evan texted me a screenshot. It was a post from one of Connor's accounts. Vague enough to avoid legal trouble, dramatic enough to be infuriating. When someone steals your family heirlooms and throws you out with nowhere to go, some people have no soul. I stared at the screen, stunned. Heirloom Connor owned. A cheap chain from a gas station, a friendship bracelet, a ring he called vintage, but was clearly from an online shop. The only inherited item he had was emotional stupidity. I drafted a cease and desist with Evan's help, sent it certified mail to Sienna's address, since that's where Connor was now staying. The post disappeared within 24 hours, but entitlement has a way of regenerating. 3 days later, I walked into the lobby after work to find Connor, flanked by 2 friends, waiting near security. He stepped forward. I need clothes for work. You'll get them, I said. Text me a list. I should be able to get my own stuff. No, I said firmly. You shouldn't. One of his friends, a taller woman with a faux intimidating stance, crossed her arms. This is ridiculous, she said. Just let him up. I looked her dead in the eye. Who are you? No, seriously, why are you speaking to me? She blinked, caught off guard. I'm his friend. Great, I said. Go be supportive somewhere else. Connor's face twisted. Marissa, stop being dramatic. Oh, you don't want dramatic, Connor. Trust me. His eyes flicked nervously toward the security guard, who was now approaching, with that tired, please don't make me get involved expression. Everyone needs to leave, the guard said. If you want items, send a list. She will bring them down. You cannot go upstairs. Connor started crying. Not genuine crying. The performative kind I'd seen before when he wanted sympathy. Jaw trembling, breath hitching too perfectly. After everything we had? Over one mistake? It wasn't one mistake, I said calmly. It was the last mistake. He froze. Security escorted them out. The building doors closed behind them. And for the first time, I realized he didn't understand what he'd lost. Not the convenience, not the comfort. But me. The next morning, I gathered the clothes he listed, placed them neatly in a bag, and handed them to the super. He texted, "Got everything. You're clear." I wished that were true, but things were about to get worse. The quiet never lasted long, not with Connor. By the 3rd week, my phone had become a revolving door of unknown numbers. Not calls this time, texts. Dozens. Each more childish than the last. You're disgusting. Real women don't throw men out. Hope you feel good about ruining his life. Homewrecker. Manipulator. Homewrecker? I lived alone. In a home I paid for. He wrecked nothing except the goodwill I kept extending far past its expiration date. I blocked each numbers as it came in, the list growing longer, my patience shorter. When the 7th number lit up my screen in a single evening, I called Evan again. Save everything, he said. Document it. If it continues, we can pursue harassment charges, but honestly, they'll burn out. They always do. He was right. By the following week, the messages stopped. The silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like an inhale before the next blow. And the next blow came in a place I least expected, the grocery store. I was tossing a bag of spinach into my cart when someone called my name. Marissa? I turned to see a woman in business casual clothes, someone familiar, but not close. It took me a moment before I placed her, one of Connor's coworkers. We'd met at a few company happy hours back when Connor still held down a job without drama. Hey, I said cautiously. She gave a sympathetic little smile. Heard about the breakup. That's rough. Yeah, I said, keeping it neutral. Didn't work out. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. He mentioned something about his ex, that it caused problems? Here we go. I sighed. He didn't mention it. He told me she was coming to my apartment the next day and I'd have to deal with it. Those were his exact words. Her eyes widened. Oh, that's not what he said happened. I'm sure it's not. She flushed, embarrassed for him, or maybe for herself. I should get going, but thanks for the clarity. As she walked away, I knew the truth was spreading. One small crack in Connor's narrative would spread like a fault line, and eventually, people would see it for what it was. But that didn't stop him from trying to rewrite the story directly to me. It happened on a Wednesday. I was working from home, mid-client call, headset on, when a violent pounding rattled my front door. Not knocking, pounding. the kind you hear in emergencies. My heart launched into my throat. I glanced at the security camera feed on my phone. Connor and Sienna, both looking furious. He hit the door again. Sienna said something sharp, her face flushed with embarrassment or anger. I couldn't tell which. I muted my microphone. "One moment, please," I told the client, then moved silently toward the door. I didn't open it. I stood on the other side of the wood, arms crossed, pulse steadying itself. They pounded again. "Marissa, open the door. We need to talk." I resumed my call, spoke calmly about budget allocations while Connor tried to break sound barriers outside my apartment. The pounding went on for nearly 5 minutes, then abruptly stopped. 20 minutes later, my building super called. "Your ex and his friend were down here demanding access again," he said. "They claimed they needed to retrieve shared property." I almost laughed. Shared property? Connor didn't own anything that cost more than $50. "That's what I thought," he said dryly. "I told them no. They said they'd call the cops. I said, go ahead." They left. "Thank you," I breathed. "I'm so sorry you're dealing with this." "No problem, but listen, this is the last time. They're both banned from the building now. Security has their photos. If they come back, we call actual police." I stared at my reflection in the darkened computer screen, feeling something shift inside me. Not fear, just disbelief. Connor had dragged Sienna back into the chaos, and Sienna, why was she even there? Regret? Loyalty? Maybe she still thought she could salvage something, the way I had once tried to salvage him. When the call ended, I checked the security footage again. There they were, arguing with the super at the front desk. Sienna looked mortified. Connor looked desperate. The super had his arms crossed, expression unmoved, as though he dealt with toddlers with more emotional regulation. When they walked away, Connor rubbed his face with both hands, defeated. Sienna shook her head, gesturing sharply, likely saying some version of, "I told you this wouldn't work." The door swung shut behind them. The feed returned to normal. I should have felt triumph. Instead, I felt tired, bone-deep tired. That evening, after shutting down my laptop, I took a long shower and leaned my forehead against the cool tiles, letting the water muffle everything. Did I handle this too harshly? Could I have sat him down and talked it through? Did I overreact? But every time I asked myself those questions, the memories came back. Covering his rent, letting the next week excuses pile up, his entitlement to my space, his comparisons to his ex, his absolute certainty that I would just accept whatever he wanted. The ex wasn't the issue. The issue was that he thought my boundaries were optional. I got out of the shower, wrapped myself in a towel, and walked through my quiet apartment. The air felt lighter than it had in years. I'd rearranged the furniture slightly. Opened blinds Connor always kept closed. Lit a candle he complained gave him headaches. The silence wasn't empty. It was mine. Just as I settled on the couch, my phone buzzed with one final message from his mother. "You destroyed her life. She lost her home and her dignity. I hope you sleep well at night." Her dignity? She wasn't the one pounding on doors and lying about heirlooms. I typed slowly, deliberately. "Your son tried to bring his ex-girlfriend to my apartment and told me I had no choice. I chose to end the relationship. Everything after that is him refusing to accept consequences. He is almost 30. Time to grow up." I blocked her number. For the first time since this entire situation began, there was true silence. No calls, no messages, no pounding, no fabricated drama. I should have known the peace wouldn't last. But for one night, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. The next few weeks settled into a stillness I hadn't felt in years. Not the uneasy quiet of waiting for someone to erupt, not the hush of walking on eggshells, just simple, breathable peace. My apartment transformed first. I didn't overhaul it dramatically, just rearrange things with intention. I moved the couch to the opposite wall, repositioned the bookshelf, opened curtains Connor always kept closed because the light made the TV glare. I painted a single accent wall, a muted forest green, a color I'd wanted since before he moved in, but always postponed because he insisted the room was too small and the color would make it feel cramped. The room didn't feel cramped. It felt like me. My mornings were different too. Coffee and silence. No background whining about running out of cereal. No one complaining that I woke up too early or that I typed too loud. No passive-aggressive sighs when I asked him to do something simple like rinse a dish. I had underestimated the weight of someone else's chaos until it wasn't living inside my home anymore. Still, I half expected the next blow, the next tantrum, the next dramatic stunt. Trauma habits don't disappear overnight. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced myself. But the buzzing stopped. The world was quiet. And then life, as it tends to do, placed closure in my path without warning. It was a Thursday morning when I ducked into a coffee shop before work. I stepped inside, letting the warmth hit my hands as I rubbed them together. I ordered my usual and stood off to the side, scrolling through emails. Then the door opened behind me. I didn't even turn, I just felt the shift, the unsettled static in the air, the kind that crawls up your spine before your brain catches up. I looked up. Connor. He froze. I froze. It was one of those collisions you can't script. Too bizarre to be anything but real. He looked rough, not in the romantic, brooding way, in the life has dragged me through gravel way. His hair was unwashed, oil clinging to the strands. His clothes hung off him in a way that made them look borrowed. He wore an old jacket I vaguely recognized from a thrift store haul he bragged about last year. His eyes were rimmed in red, not from crying, I guessed, but from lack of sleep. "Marissa," he said quietly. "Hi." He didn't order anything, didn't step aside. He just stood there like someone who had walked into a memory instead of a coffee shop. My name was called at the counter. I grabbed my cup, but he spoke again before I could leave. "Can we talk just for a minute?" Against my better judgment, I nodded. I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't angry. I was curious. Not about him, but about the version of him that would show up today. We sat at a small corner table, the kind meant for whispers and apologies. He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." I didn't interrupt. He kept going. "The X thing." He rubbed his forehead. "It was stupid. I wasn't thinking. I don't even know why I said it like that. I guess I thought you'd just let it go. You always let things go. I took advantage of that." He stared at the table, tracing small circles with his thumb. "And my mom, my friends, the posts online, everything. I shouldn't have done any of that. I was angry, embarrassed, and I made it worse." His voice cracked slightly, just enough to reveal the exhaustion underneath. "I get it now. You weren't trying to control me. You were protecting your home, and you were right." I nodded slowly. "Yeah," I said, "I was." He flinched, but he didn't argue. "I'm living with my parents again," he admitted. "Had to quit my job. The commute was too far, and I just couldn't keep up. I'm working retail now, hourly, barely keeping up with my car payment." There was no satisfaction in hearing it, just reality, catching up. "And Sienna?" I asked gently. He let out a small, bitter laugh. "That lasted a week. She said I had too much drama. She wasn't wrong." He finally looked at me, not with pleading, not with anger, but with a quiet, painful recognition. "I ruined something good, I know that. I just wanted to say sorry, for real, without anyone else involved. No excuses." I believed him, not because he'd earned the benefit of the doubt, but because he finally sounded like someone telling the truth. Maybe adversity had rubbed the performance out of him. "I appreciate the apology," I said. He nodded, accepting the finality beneath my voice. "I'm not asking to get back together," he said quickly. "I know that's done. I just wanted you to hear me say it. You deserve better than how I treated you." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I did." He stood up, hands trembling slightly. "Take care, Marissa." "You too." He left. He didn't look back. I sat there a moment longer, letting the steam from my coffee blur the edges of the world. It didn't feel triumphant or dramatic. It felt done. Completely, unequivocally done. In the weeks that followed, my life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became mine again. The apartment felt brighter. The bills were predictable. The peace stayed. I slept deeply. I cooked for one without resentment. My savings grew for the first time in months. Friends visited without sensing tension in the walls. My parents stopped asking if everything was okay. Even my building super smiled more when he saw me. The memory of Connor's chaos, now a fading anecdote of building lore. And then, one night, something unexpected, but gentle, entered my life. His name was Evan, not the lawyer Evan. This one was a different friend of a friend I met at a small dinner gathering. He was a nurse, lived alone, paid his own bills, kind eyes, quiet humor, zero interest in theatrics. We went to dinner, and when the check came, he reached for it. I reached too. He laughed softly. "We can split it." Split it. 2 words that held an emotional weight I hadn't realized I was starving for. We talked about boundaries, expectations, communication, not in heavy, dramatic monologues, but in natural, easy conversation. He asked questions. He listened. He didn't interrupt or minimize or get defensive. It was different, simple, healthy, and for the first time in months, I felt the possibility of something new, something grounded. Not a replacement, a beginning. Looking back now, I understand something I didn't then. The issue was never Sienna. It wasn't even Connor. It was the lack of respect he showed for my home, my voice, my boundaries. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. When they tell you your feelings are inconvenient, believe that too. And when they say, you'll just have to deal with it, understand what they're really saying. They think your boundaries don't matter. They think you won't leave. They think you're safe to disrespect. But walking away, locking the door, literally and metaphorically, was the moment I remembered who I was, and who I'd always been beneath the noise. Someone capable, someone steady, someone enough. On my own terms, in my own home, in my own peace.